The next thing we're going to do is install the oil pan and the oil strainer. And here's the oil strainer, locking washer, 2 bolts, and the gasket for it. So it's a good idea to periodically drop the oil pan and clean out the oil pan and this oil strainer. Since these bikes don't have an oil filter, this is all you've got. And after you tighten down those 10mm bolts, just bend up the tabs on this locking washer to secure it. Then the next thing we'll be installing is the oil pan. Straightened it out, flattened out the mating surfaces with a new gasket, 12 10mm bolts, and bolts and wave washers. That's what holds it on. So I'm going to coat both surfaces of this gasket with some sealant and also the bolt threads, because these bolt holes are through holes and oil will leak out through these bolts unless you apply some type of sealant there. Once we've got the gasket sealant applied to both sides, we'll install the oil pan. From here, it's just a matter of installing the 12 bolts and lock washers, wave washers, and tightening them down. They don't get torqued very tight at all. You'll warp the pan if you over tighten them. So just a little bit of just snug is pretty good on these, and that's how you do the oil pan. Back on the front of the engine now, and we're going to install the electrical components. First thing we'll install is the magneto rotor, like this. It has 2 lines scribed on it, and what you want to do is place the engine timing mark, the S mark, right in the window here, right in the center of the window. And when that S mark is there, this line should point basically straight up, so that when you install the points plate, like this, the notch in the points plate, hopefully you can see that, the notch in the points plate and the notch in the magneto rotor line up together. So in this case, we've got the S right where we want it, and we've got this where we want it. And yeah, that's right where we want the rotor to be. So basically we want it pointing straight up like this, and then we can use its bolt. Temporarily going to install the advance here. And all this is going to do is press that magneto rotor on. And you don't have to go crazy on this, just snug it down and then remove the bolt and the advancer. The bolt is super long, so it will take a minute to thread in and out. And then just to verify, you can install the points plate, and you should be able to line up the marks, and this should still be at the S, which it is. So the notch in the rotor and the notch in the points plate are lined up right there. So we're looking good. We're installing a new coil on this build, so that's the next thing I'm going to install onto here before I install this as a unit. Okay, I've got the new coil mounted onto the points plate, and I'm just going to slip it over the studs, and it just fastens with two 10mm nuts and flat washers. And we'll go ahead and snug this down, making sure those notches are aligned like we have them. And that's the installation of the points plate and the magneto rotor. Next thing we're going to install is the generator rotor. We've got it cleaned up, and again it just presses onto the end of the crankshaft there. Then we've got the generator body. The generator body, slide it over the rotor and make sure you push the brushes in or you'll break them. And then the two holes here line up with two holes in the timing cover, and they're held on with these two mounting bolts. Just go ahead and snug down the generator body. And that's how you basically install the engine electrics. We'll also then install the advance mechanism and its bolt, but we're going to set the ignition timing before we do that real quick. The points gap and the ignition timing. Forgot to say we can also install the generator bolt. This is an R69S motor, and it came with a vibration damper from the factory installed on the front here. That's what these components are. It's missing the big disc that goes on here. Those would come apart, and people would often remove them and just install this without the rest of it. That's what we're going to do here. You can get new reproduction vibration dampers if you want to run a vibration damper. I'm not really sold on them, so in this case we'll just reinstall the bolt here. And this will also seat the generator rotor when we tighten that. So there we go. Next thing is we'll statically time the bike and then reinstall the coil wire and the condenser wire onto the points after we do that. And then it will be ready to go back in the engine. So got the bike statically timed, new coil installed, reconnected the coil wire and the condenser wire. The advanced bolt is tight, generator bolt is tight. The plug wires and caps are run and attached to the coil, and this gap set to 10 millimeter between the end of the wire and these ground points. So this engine is ready to go back in the bike, and hopefully it'll be running a little bit later today.